Well, hello, everybody. We are so grateful to have our gathering today out of love and respect for Birgitta Alakare. And we welcome wholeheartedly all of you that have come to this gathering. Everyone on the panel, Mia, Kari, Bob, Sandy, Jaakko, Ray, and Dirk, and our chat people that are going to be helping with the chat, Isolde and Rafaela. Thank you all so much for coming. And we welcome you on behalf of Open Dialogue, Open Excellence, and the Madden America Foundation, Zine. We wanted to begin by acknowledging that there's deep sorrow in this gathering at the loss of our beloved, for many of us, teacher and colleague and friend and family member. We have with us today Saia and Jaakko Alakare, Birgitta's son and daughter. Very grateful that you are able to be with us. And we welcome all of you who have come from many parts of the world. This is the first time that we've come together as community since the loss of Birgitta, and grief is present with us. And we also come to honor her life and work and to share some of her very careful, many years of experience, understandings and words.
Thank you. And now we'd like to invite Jaakko Seikkula to introduce himself and why we're gathered here today.
Hello to everyone. I'm in this very sad moment. I'm also very pleased to have this option to honor the life and work of Birgitta and her contribution for the more human psychiatric practices that she was involved to develop first in Lapland, in Finland, in Tornio, and thereafter within the community world around. So my name is Jaakko Seikkula, and I had a great pleasure to work together with Birgitta during the early years, since the early years of 80s. And during the time we were able to create this more human understanding of how to meet people in the most severe misery they have in their lives. And step by step, Birgitta became a kind of spirit of the open dialogue. It was a work of all of us, but Birgitta, after become all the way around while working as a psychiatrist in the hospital, and thereafter while working as a chief of the psychiatric organization in the Western Lapland Health District, really became a main contributor for the practice, both in her manner to be very friendly and warm collaborator, and also in her manner to be a very wise leader with all. After my leaving Kerpudas and Tornio, I had a pleasure to work with Birgitta a lot with different research projects. And in this research project actually that was continued until the very end of her life. She made her very final comments in one paper that we were writing only 2 months before her death, so that she has a very great impact. In this seminar, we will focus all the things that we remember we want to focus, but I would like to start to introduce some piece of her importance to finding a way to develop human psychiatric practices in which the use of medication is declined and build up more place for the interactional way of meeting with people. And I will share as first a screen by showing only one piece of research that was made in the Western Lapland, and that is a follow-up of people who became into the treatment because of their psychotic problems in the 90s and early 2000 in open dialogue treatment in Western Lapland. They were altogether 108 persons. And this was compared to the people who came into the treatment between 95 and 96 in the rest of Finland. And after approximately 19 years, we can see that there are huge differences about the life of the clients. We can see that people in their traditional treatment were hospitalized more than 1 month, almost 100% of cases. After 19 years, they still have contact with psychiatry in 50% compared to 28% in the people who were met in the open dialogue care. And they are using neuroleptic medication in 80% of cases in the rest of Finland compared to with more than 30%, 36% in Western, about the patient who came into the treatment in Western Lapland. And the most dramatic situation is that the people who came into the treatment in this open dialogue care in Lapland, more than 2/3 of them have returned to full active work still after 19 years, compared to 60% being retired because of incapacities in the rest of Finland. This is a huge difference. And my point for today is to think about that one core element in these outstanding outcomes is the use of medication, because really there has happened a decline of the role of neuroleptic medication in meeting with psychotic crises. And in this respect, let's stop sharing. And in this respect, the work of Birgitta was most essential. When we started this research project, actually in '92, it was a part of need-adapted approach development in Finland, and Birgitta became the one who was clinically in charge to introduce the new idea to not to start with the neuroleptic medication with the people who were suffering with psychotic problems. And step by step, this became a kind of idea of her work on the whole. And in this way, I think that one of the main explanation of the good outcomes is that really in Western Lapland, they have managed to decline the role of medication by introducing more human ways of meeting with the people, no longer thinking so much about the symptoms, but more thinking about the life on the whole. In 2016, in Gothenburg in Sweden, there was founded an institute of supporting the ideas how to withdraw of medication in psychiatric patients. And in this meeting, Birgitta had a speech in which she spoke about her practice and her way of thinking about the treatment on the whole, and especially on the medication. And this film you can find in YouTube, and probably many of you already have seen it. But for this webinar, I have chosen 2 pieces to look shortly about her ideas.
Thank you, Jaakko.
Yes, welcome, Birgitta.
Thank you. It's very interesting to be here now, and I would like to talk about our work in Western Lapland and how I would like to tell about my own understanding the need of neuroleptic medication on antidepressive medication and how to prescribe medication if somebody is needed. And also something about our treatment model. There you can see Tornio is Western Lapland, and I have worked there over 30 years. And I'm happy I could work also in the hospital and also in outpatient settings. And I was chief psychiatrist, so I could take responsibility of my patient also when they go to the hospital. Maybe Western Lapland is better known as a place where open dialogue approach was developed, and all of our staff members were developing that approach. It was made together. In early 80s, when I began my career in psychiatry, our hospital was very big, and it was so-called B hospital in Finland. All our patients were chronic schizophrenic patients, and they had a very heavy medication, very much antipsychotic medication, at least 2 different ones. And of course they had side effects, and we gave also some medication against them. And as I heard Sami said about diagnosis and medication, something I would like to say also same way. And after these 30 years, I still not know what is the diagnosis, the right diagnosis when I meet the patient. And if I know the right diagnosis, it is so that I should say what is the right treatment, right medication. But when I meet the patients, the diagnosis, I have to say that the diagnosis changes all the time, according to ESD, ICD-10. And it changes when we are in relationship with the patients. In traditional psychiatry, I think the psychiatrist is some kind of medical authority. Nobody asks about his recommendations or prescriptions, and they are not doubtful. So the medication or the need of the medication, it has not been discussed together. The family and the patient and the other people around the patient, also the other staff members or professionals, they trust the doctor. So, but they have also many kind of fears, but also some kind of hope of miracle, that medication can help or make some kind of miracle. And also the psychiatrist prescribes medication according his own training. In that way, the medication is not integrated to the whole treatment process. It is only one different separate part of the treatment. And if you prescribe the medication in the first beginning, it can happen so that the medication is the most important issue during the whole treatment. How does the medication affect? Is it too much? It is too low? All people look, symptoms disappeared. So that the medication is maybe it can come the only discussion about the medication. And what happens in real life, something Sami and Olga were talking about. It is not important in the treatment. And I think that it happens if the medication is prescribed in the beginning. In our experience, we began so-called treatment meetings in 1984, and also the medication was discussed in those meetings. Pharmaceutical companies sell medications. When they are introducing their products, they are talking about the continuation of a medication and relapses are. But how to understand the relapse? I think that the relapse is usually a new crisis. And of course, everybody can have a new crisis. If you have been depressed and afterwards you got depression once again, you can have some crisis in your life. But I want to tell something about our open dialogue approach, how it can be helpful and how it can decrease the need of medication. Because if the patient and the family can get help very easily and quickly, the situation is not so severe, not so chronic, and there are many possibilities to change and think another way. And people, they have not decided that this is a disease. It is something what is happening in their lives. And the network is always very important. They are eager to help and they have new explanations and their understanding about the situation is very important. Flexibility and mobility, as we see our patient at home settings, we can see their empowerment when we see them in their own environment. Responsibility, if the same team and the same doctor, same psychiatrist is responsible during the whole treatment process, also the doctor can understand more and see more and see what is happening and he can trust to the process more. And this is something I would like to change in our psychiatric system, because in that 20 years follow-up, our psychologist found if there are many doctors, the patient got many medications, more medication than if there was only one psychiatrist. And I think that it is quite easy to change this, at least in our region, because it is a small district and we have no so many doctors. The same doctor can follow during the whole treatment process, also if a patient goes to the hospital. And tolerance of uncertainty, to give time to spontaneous recovery and also trust to the team work is very important. Dialogue, everything is discussed together. Also in those treatment meetings, also the medication is discussed. But I hope that it is not most important issue. It is only one issue now and then. And if the medication is prescribed, it is important to discuss it and also to evaluate it and to stop the medication. But I need other staff members to those discussions. This is my thoughts about prescribing the medication. All the time I find it more important to discuss about the medication, what kind of feelings, what kind of fears, what kind of hopes the people have about the medication. And I need that case-specific team to that discussion. In our district, in our psychiatry, I have said that no psychiatrist is allowed to meet the patient alone. There has to be some member from a case-specific team, so that also the discussion about the medication is much more easier with the nurse or psychologist She can ask why I'm thinking about medication, why I'm recommending it, how long, what side effects, that kind of questions. And also the family members and the patient can ask also those questions. But I think it is for them it is easier to ask than there are somebody else also asking. If I prescribe medication, it is important why I am doing it. Also family members, they should know why their relative is taking some medication. And low doses and not for a long time to evaluate it. This was most important for this meeting, how to get off the medication. All psychiatric medication, they affect too many receptors in our brains. And our brains are very wise and flexible. They try to adapt to changes. So the consequence, for example, when somebody is taking antipsychotic medication, the dopamine receptors are increasing in our brains. And after some time, we have much more receptors than before the medication. And if somebody stops antipsychotic medication very quickly, you got some kind of brainstorm. Maybe it can cause hallucination or some kind of other symptoms. And it is not a relapse. It is because of withdrawal of medication. So that it is important to stop medication very slowly so that our brains can adapt to new situation. It can take 2 years or 4 years. I have many examples. I have met many patients, and usually it takes quite a long time. It takes also a long time because in some cases I have recommended earlier stopping the medication or withdrawal of the medication. But the patient and the family, they are afraid. One young man, he had medication, I think it almost over 1 year. He was so afraid to stop the medication that in the end of the medication he took only very small amount of antipsychotic medication once a week. It is no sense, but it was important to him. And he could stop the medication that way. And also, I remember young men. And so the family members, they are afraid of stopping the medication. I should stop now, but okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'd like to go to the panelists for their thoughts. I'd like to just let the audience know, what we're trying to do here is a little different than the usual sort of talk show that you might see. We're not asking questions, we're not directing the conversation, and we're inviting the panel to leave space for thought. That when somebody has said what they have to say, to take a couple of breaths before the next person speaks, and provide the opportunity to let what they said sink in, and even maybe they get a chance to think about what they've just said, and if they want to add something to that. And what that also does is it gives the people, all of the attendees in the chat room, a chance to also think about what's being talked about, and maybe communicate with each other and ask questions. Basically, we're trusting the wisdom of the panel to know where they need to go, and we're trusting the wisdom of the attendees in the chat room to know what they need to talk about, rather than just try to drive a conversation in a single direction. And with that, I'd like to invite the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Dirk. Just your name and where you live, and just a word or two about how you come to be doing this.
My name is Dirk Corstens. I live in the Netherlands and I work as a psychiatrist in the north of our country. And I started to work in psychiatry in 1984 as a doctor. So at the same time as Open Dialogue started in Finland. I think that's enough.
Thank you. Kari?
Okay, hello to all. My name is Kari Valtanen. I'm a psychiatrist at the Adolescent Psychiatric Outpatient Clinic in Western Lapland. I've been working there since 20 years, and just I realized that how big influence really Birgitta has had on my thinking when watching the video. I'd like to say my condolences to the family members and friends, because there hasn't been really gathering before. Lämmin osanottoni teille kaikille läheisille, että kun ei ollut hautajaisia. Briefly in Finnish, just to noticing that I'm really happy to join this meeting with the family members here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mia?
Hello, my name is Mia Kurtti. I'm a nurse and a family therapist from Western Lapland, Tornio. I have been working with Birgitta since 2002 until 2014 when she retired. And during and after that, doing trainings together and writing together and thinking together, talking together. And yes, I also want to honor the fact that the family members are here. Hei minunkin puolesta. And that we all are here. This is a wonderful honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandy?
So I'm Sandy Steingard. I'm a psychiatrist in the United States. And I found my way in Tornio, I think it was 2012, after having learned about it through Robert Whitaker's working, and had the great honor, pleasure, privilege of meeting Birgitta, and want to echo the condolences offered to her family and friends and colleagues who worked with her in a much closer way. I can say, we'll get into it, but the day that I knew she was ill, when I heard she died, I sat in my kitchen and wept. And you think about what it is that a person affects someone on the other side of the world so deeply. And I think we'll probably be talking about that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Sandy.
Thank you. Ray?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ray Waddingham. I'm from Leicestershire here in England and the UK. I am many things, like everyone here. I have lived experience of the diagnosis of schizophrenia. I hear voices. I'm an open dialogue practitioner, a facilitator and a trainer, and feel surprisingly moved at the moment sitting here with you guys and just having some of the words of Birgitta running through that feel like beautiful gifts that really resonate with the way that I see the world. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of that with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to Bob.
Yeah, I'm Bob Whitaker. I met Birgitta in 2009. And the reason I went to Tornio was I was writing this book, as Sandy said, called Anatomy of an Epidemic. And I was looking for a place where they had good outcomes for their psychotic patients, and also were using antipsychotics in a different manner, sort of a selective use manner. And this was the one place in the world where I found that to be so. I traveled there, and Birgitta couldn't have been kinder and more welcoming in giving me time to understand what was going on there. And I just think it's great gathering here today because I think she needs to be appreciated for a real transformative person in the history of psychiatry. And I don't often think she gets that recognition. So it's great to be here.
Thank you, Bob. So opening to dialogue amongst you of what touched you about Birgitta's words and what you feel to share.
I could say some thoughts while looking at the. I've really been looking at the video many times, and I find it very good speech about the issues. And even if I know while being working with Birgitta a long time in the hospital, so that there is a lot of things in which Birgitta has affected, and the medication issue is not the only one. But I also think that it's very important to make point about this, because that's in a way when we started to create a new, let's say, a kind of need-adapted way to use the medication, neuroleptic medication in psychotic problems, instead of using that automatically. That was strongly against the main idea in psychiatry, and also thereafter they started to immerse their treatment excellence guideline, in which it's almost a kind of a law. I know that there are some countries in which you are condemned if you do not prescribe medication. But Birgitta was very bold to going on with this issue, and I know that the psychiatric system outside was not that friendly towards her with this idea, so that she was very bold to go through with all these suspicions by relying on the team, so that she could also all the time rely that she's not alone, but all her work was based on the team. And that's what I especially like in her works, that she said that the change is possible if we start to work in a more open way in a team without this. Of course, we have professional hierarchies, but not a kind of conversational hierarchies, that we can all use our resources. And I think that was the strength of Birgitta, that she really could mobilize the resources of her colleagues in respect to what level of the hierarchy in the staff memberships they were. And I still want to highlight, for me it's so important. I suppose that I know a bit about the situation in the world, and I do not know so many psychiatrists that so long time has been working persistently with the idea not going into the medication. So perhaps they really had most experience of looking what happens in the life of psychotic patients when they are not when they are not medicated, or if they use medication, it's also stopped. And as Tommy Periström was a main researcher, as we were involved in the long-term follow-up, we really could follow the long part of their lives afterwards. And in this way, the knowledge that Birgitta was producing is a very convincing. The external validity of this knowledge is very strong. It's much stronger compared to these laboratory kind of studies in which it is referred. So that I really want to emphasize the importance of this boldness.
Actually, when you, Jaakko, spoke, I was thinking I paid attention maybe to some same issues. I wrote down here words like whole staff approach, and this how much Birgitta really cherishes the collaboration and the voices of and the input from everyone in the professional team, but also the other network members and family members, and of course the patient, service user themselves. And this really stepping down from the position of in high in hierarchy to really to collaborate, and that's something what I think a lot in my work every day, and how we can keep up with this same fashion of working.
Yes, I am remembering the years when I went to the adolescents clinic to work there. It was established in the early 2000s, and they were really the team there. There are people who are present in this event as well from that team, who were really establishing that unit based on the ideas of open dialogue and based on the research that you did, Jaakko, in the 80s and 90s. And one thing that I have been thinking when I have been thinking about Birgitta, and this is something that we spoke a lot about, the trust, about that how she was trusting to people. She was trusting people. She was trusting us. She was trusting in life. And she also wrote that one of the main tasks in training is to create people the trust towards social networks and towards dialogue. That how can we stay even when it seems that we cannot stay? That was something that she was talking a lot in our conversations. And that is our task, to stay there, even when it feels that it's impossible in many ways. And she was inviting all the time everyone to be part of those conversations in organizational level and in treatment processes. She was always looking for the possibilities and increased kind of, increased number of voices.
I think as I hear you guys talking, it takes me back to the bits of the video where Birgitta's talking about relapse. I felt like hugging her through when she mentioned her way of viewing this thing called relapse, because to me, this time where things get difficult again, when the voices, the beliefs, the communication challenges come in, can be so disruptive and overwhelming for everybody. It feels very much like a system response to that is close everything down, add the medication back in or increase it, stop the dialogue, get it safe, and then try and open up again. And certainly in my personal life, that's been catastrophic. It's deprived me of opportunities for growth and for connection and left me alone. And it feels like what Birgitta and the rest of you and the team have created is a space where we stay with and be with, even when it's tricky, and maybe use medication. But I think, like she said, the medication becomes everything very quickly, which is so sad, because even in my life, for more than a decade, more than 20 years, medication, even if I don't take it, is still prominent in my thinking because it was introduced very at the start. So yeah, this ability to commit and believe in the dialogue is just profound. And the humility that she never says, I did this is mine. It's you guys did it. The people who were there then did it. And we keep doing it together.
you know, it's like so much to say. And maybe I was thinking I could explain like why her work had so much impact on a psychiatrist working on the other side of the world in another small town in the north of our country. And it so much captures what a lot of you said, that the thing that she said about relapse as a new crisis also hit me. And what I was thinking is how profoundly radical that concept is in the context of a lot of Western psychiatry, where it's assumed, it's a known, it's like the known fact that this is just the recurrence of some illness. So that leads to using the medications to, you know, quash it down. And it's just a profoundly different way of thinking about this. The other thing I wanted to say is, you know, she said in that, I still don't know. I mean, there was so much in that video that's so rich. Every time I listen to it, I learn more. And that not knowing, I said somewhere, like, I came to open dialogue because of the drugs and I stayed for the dialogue. I mean, I am interested in the pharmacology, but I learned so much from all of you. I mean, I'm staring at a screen of people who have been so important in my life, including Birgitta, but that way of being. And I had come to the conclusion that the only valid way to think about psychiatry is uncertainty, but that's so hard to do by yourself. And so she, you know, being this woman leader who seemed to have the fortitude to do what she did was just, you know, just profoundly helpful.
That is what what it evokes in me is that she must have been a very powerful woman. And as a psychiatrist with these ideas and being faithful to it for more than 30 years, that's an effort, I think, a big effort. And I liked in the video what she said about don't leave psychiatrists alone with clients. It's, on the one hand, it's humor, but on the other hand, it's very well that you understand how difficult it is to stay away from the role of a doctor, and that medication, as he said, becomes the subject of all treatment. And that's what I experience now in the situation I work, that people are used, I started a new job and people immediately start to talk about their medications instead of just making contact. So I think for me, doing together, that's what it said to me in the video, and what she very important lessons. And indeed there is a lot in this video. I saw it now 3 times and it's very rich. Yeah.
I'd just like to circle back a little bit to what Jaakko said. It's not easy being a psychiatrist, breaking with your tribe when you're a doctor. And that's what she did for 30 years. And that took incredible bravery. And just in terms of her, just look at it from a historical perspective. Since antipsychotics came on the scene, I only really know of 2 prolonged efforts to see what outcomes might be if you made different use of medications, less use of antipsychotics. One was the Soteria project, which was led by Lauren Mosher in the 70s. And they actually had about a 10-year project and they found better outcomes that way. And then since then, there's only been one place in the Western world that has really tried to use medications in a different way as part of a larger paradigm of care. And that's, what was done with the group and led by Birgitta in Northern Finland. And that's a transformative story, what happened in Tornio and what they presented their data. And we saw it with in both what the slide that Jaakko showed us and also what she spoke about, a chance to really reimagine what is possible for people when they first come in as first episode. And that's a real gift to everybody and every society. And it's potentially transformative. And the last thing I want to say, one thing about being with Birgitta, she wasn't anti-medicine in any way. I always thought that she had the idea of when you think of a good doctor, it's for whom and for how long, right? That's always the key question with the use of medications, for whom and for how long. And I think under her leadership, that's what was sort of developed, a protocol for whom and for how long. And it was that selective use that really made it possible to have these humane practices really flourish. And so, if psychiatry is going to change to a different way, what Birgitta led, she's really a transformative figure. And I hope she's remembered for that. And it took a lot of bravery and courage. And she did it with absolute grace, I think, too.
Just want to add, as you said, Bob, for who and for how long, something just in me. And it was like, for who, for how long, and how. And it's the how that she started to talk about, and that I'd love to have more conversations with her and with everybody here. Because I think sometimes when prescribers look for protocols, they're looking for characteristics in the client, i.e. me, that mean medication will or won't be useful. And what I was hearing was a relational way of going, I've got an idea it might be useful. And then I trust my colleagues to question me, and the family and the client to question, and that we work it out together. And certainly in the open dialogue team I worked in Kent, this is what we tried to do. And it was really refreshing to sit with a psychiatrist or a nurse, and for me to be the one saying, I'm wondering, is medication something we might want to talk about? And then go, oh, why do you say that, Ray? The mad person in the room. It wasn't the psychiatrist holding the meds responsibility fully. It was shared. And it was the smallest part of all of the conversations. But it was the how that was the key, I think.
I was also paying attention when Birgitta said about that the whole team should discuss about the medication. It's not really about the psychiatrist, and also to discuss about it many times and look for different options and alternatives and think about the pros and cons. And when you can all discuss about it, to me it seems we then find also different ways to go ahead. But I think that's the whole team approach. What I just found out, this idea, that's what it really is about.
I mean, one thing I was going to add, and it's sort of, I guess, being a psychiatrist here, it's suited that it's a kind of technical comment, but what was happening in the United States and other parts right around the time when you were all doing your research up there and holding off on using meds was this very prominent hypothesis that delaying medications does harm. So it's not just, helping to be with the person and finding a safe place. You were going to lead to worse outcomes if you delayed this. And it was promoted by a very powerful psychiatrist at the National Institute of Mental Health. And it's holds sway, even though the data on it remains questionable to this day. And the work that you've done, which would challenge it, tends to be ignored. So it's just another piece of how, to me, so profound it is that you were all able to work in this way, given what was happening and continues to happen really in the rest of a lot of the Western psychiatric establishment, I think.
One thought coming up into my mind, both after the comments of Bob and Sandy, is that Bob, you used the word transformative work and transformative period that we are living in psychiatry. If you think for a while the table that I showed in the very beginning of the webinar, and you look at the outcomes of this traditional psychiatry, it's terrible. It's really terrible, because nothing has happened during 30 years. And actually there are some who are saying that the outcomes has become worse, exactly on the period of time that Sandy was referring. There appeared this hysteria that psychosis is neurotoxic and you need to medicate to prevent that toxic process without any evidence. It was a hypothesis that was developed. It was actually, I read the paper about the person who developed this idea, and he tried to calm down and say that people, I don't have a research. It's a kind of hypothesis that you can make about it, but it really took over all, and it really has taken over the psychiatry and has made a lot of harm. And in my mind, the work of Birgitta and the idea of open dialogue and or other more human approaches is in a way to I don't know how to say it in English, to have the flag throughout the dark period, that there are humanistic choices still, that not all need to follow this very bad road that has been built up of very poor research that is based on, and that's why it's for me also so valuable that I'm very happy to be involved in this open dialogue, because I know that this is the case. Really, humans in their miseries need to be met in a human way, and there is no sense only to look at the symptoms, and this could not have happened if Birgitta and of course other doctors, other psychiatrists who have been working has not been involved as a part of the team, but still very important role.
And I'm thinking also when listening to you that when it happens in the meetings and in treatment processes, the polyphonic discussion about different possibilities and challenges that there are. Also, one thing what she did was that she make sure that there were many arenas in the whole organization where we could discuss about these things together. And mainly the focus was in those days that why are we here for? Why are we doing this work, and how are we doing that? And what are our beliefs when we are doing this? And I think it takes that is needed in organizations and systems so that people can really learn to know each other and to discuss with each other about their worldviews and understandings. Because more if people are disconnected, there becomes to be these vacuumed ideas about and different kind of hypotheses about humanity, and people start to work differently and maybe more structured way that is possibly not so helpful. So I do trust the dialogue in every level of the system. And she did that too, and she learned that to us.
Sandy asked earlier before this meeting the question about what made all this possible, and I'm really admiring all the genius choices you made at the 80s, starting to look at the relational world, the social relations and how meaningful the family relations are, and then the support from network. This whole team approach of putting up such training programs for the whole staff, everyone joining them, that you could really discuss about the values of the work, the ideas about what are we thinking about this work, and how we collaborate, how we understand the crisis together, and how can we be there together. And then this research program. So I think there were so many kind of genius choices made in this. It's also a community to me that I've got such a huge admiration to all of you who started putting this up, and how I think it's kind of a living organism still, and I'm hoping that it would be possible to bring it to different places around the world, because there is such a need for these ways of working. And Birgitta was such a carrying all this, not alone, but together with all the staff, and I feel very a lot of gratitude.
I'm just thinking that one of the questions that's come up in the Q&A was, how does open dialogue relate to risk? And it feels really relevant, because I know, Sandy, you were talking about this when we met on Wednesday. It's like, it's one thing to say that this approach, we don't talk about medications so much, we're much more careful. But what the sticking point when we talk to often people who are not using this approach is, what do you do in really scary situations? When things are really heightened, everyone's freaking out. How do you not resort to meds as the first port of call? And I got the sense when we were talking that for Birgitta and many people in this approach in Western Lapland, it's something about the quality of being. How can you be with someone in a crisis when everyone's worried around them? I don't know if anyone has anything they want to say to that.
Actually, one situation comes up into my mind. This happened. This is one of the families that were involved also in the research, and they had a daughter, about 16 years of age, who had moved to occupational college nearby the city that she was living, and from home, so that she did not want to go from home, but was actually living in the other city. And when she started her studies in August, and when Easter time came in the early April, and when she came home, the parents saw that there is big problems now, that they need to make contact, and in very different situation, they went to the primary healthcare center. Of course, they contacted the crisis team, and it was organized meetings at home, because they did not want to have their daughter at their home, and she was in a very bad situation. She stopped speaking. She was turning her eyes into the roof and making the swinging movements, and not so much anything else. And there was a team going on, and the team, there was another doctor, and Birgitta was not able to be part of the team, but she said to the team that you can be in contact with me every time you are there. And every time they went to their home, and actually Birgitta also asked me that if I could be part of a kind of supporting group, because it really sounded very difficult, challenging situation. and the team was very anxious and very occupied of the situation, and quite immediately they started to speak about that this is so severe situation that we need to go into the medication. And what did Birgitta respond? What did he respond was, let's see tomorrow. And the day after tomorrow, they met with their family and were very anxious and very occupied, and came and said, and what did Birgitta say? Birgitta say, let's see tomorrow. How is the situation in tomorrow? And step by step, we really managed to have more safety, and actually quite, I don't know what is rapid, but in 4 months' time, this crisis was in a way that she decided to go into the school, and I met this family in follow-up interviews, and also Birgitta was involved in the follow-up interviews, and for the family, it was very important. They were very occupied for their daughter, and the daughter became very occupied of the situation afterwards. But this is one example of the, even if sensing the pain and the misery of the family, and which is spread to the people who are meeting with the families, to have this idea that there may be some other options also. But I suppose that it was in this situation important to have a kind of outside support for the team also, not take all alone responsibility of this very uncertain situation that they were living.
Yes, and of course this is a big topic, as everything is. But I remember during my first summer when I was working at the ward, 2002, there was a crisis situation, and I was thinking with I just got out from the school, and I was thinking that, okay, when there's a crisis, people come to the hospital. That's the way it has to be. And they said that no, we go to their homes, and I remember we were building up these evening shifts to the family's home, and we stayed there, and there were these treatment meetings which I didn't understand yet what they were about, but I was there, and I was guided through the whole way that this is the way we are talking about these things. And when the treatment meetings ended, and if I said something like, why did Dad say like this or that? Birgitta said to me, why didn't you say that in the meeting? You are welcome to say that in the meeting when we are there. Let's be transparent about how we feel and think in these situations. So that was the very first learning that I had. And also about the continuity. And Birgitta has said about this during the last years as well, that this is one of the main things when we think about the so-called risk, that when there is knowing and trust and continuity, everybody feels more safe. These are the first things that comes to me when thinking about this question.
To me, I'm still thinking about the teamwork and how we can kind of have trust among between us in the team when we meet people in extreme crisis. That's how we can reflect, think about how we can be kind of flexible, how often we should meet, what voices we should listen to. Should we have more voices? So I think it's also the kind of the, again, thinking that how we can learn to work together and not to rush into any conclusions or medications or hospitalization or something, but really this kind of this fashion that what about we meet tomorrow, or and so how to kind of develop this safety in that way.
I have a question for all of you. It's a hypothesis I've had, so now I can indulge my curiosity. But the other psychiatrist who's had an enormous influence on me, another wonderful woman psychiatrist, is Joanna Moncrief. And she's written about this drug-centered approach. So you're not treating some illness, you have these psychoactive drugs that may or may not be useful. And it, you know, my idea is that that's how you were thinking about the drugs there, maybe not with that label. And, you know, the beauty of the work you do is it helps you to know what to do, you know, because a lot of us have not developed that skill, you know, because we're using the drug in a different way. And I'm just curious whether that hypothesis does resonate with the people that were doing this work up in northern Finland.
If I briefly say that, it makes so much sense to me, like the whole open dialogue makes sense to me, that I like Moncrief's idea, and this, when we think about what are the possible benefits or possible disadvantages of medication, it's something we regularly do, that think about not think it's as a cure, but more kind of a unspecific way to take down some enormous anxiety, but not to think about that it would solve any distress and long term. There's something, Mia, you would like to add?
No, I'm just I'm remembering one conversation that I had with Birgitta, and I have been asking this question from her in different situations. Last September, when we had our research theory day in our own in-house training, and I asked from her that in the late 80s, why did you decide? What made you think that this is the kind of question to why did you doubt medication then? Why did you doubt that antipsychotics would be useful? And she said that there was loads of knowledge already then that it had challenges, that the use of medication has challenges. And here we are, over 30 years later, still having this question that should we have these medications and how much and for how long? But I don't know, Jaakko, do you remember those conversations that you had in the 80s about the medication, and how was it for you then?
Yes, in a way, it was a question already very early in the 80s. So that we had, when we started to work, we really, as Birgitta said in the film, that there were a lot of people who had a diagnosis of schizophrenia in the hospital in a very severe situation in their lives, and in a situation in which nothing seemed to help. And already that time, we had some knowledge of some forms of therapy who are not based of using the medication. And we started to work in this way also, myself also working, so that we had already then information about, there is an American psychotherapist, his name was Bertram P. Caron, who unfortunately passed away 2 years ago. And he has produced in a way to look at the lives when people have hearing voices of some, in a very concrete way. People speak about their life, and it's not some illness that produced this. And his idea was not using the medication, but go into the issues. And we started to follow that. But at that time, it was not. We were not mature enough, because we did not have the systems to support that. They were more like simple trials to go down with the medication. And then this research project that started in Finland in '92 made it possible to have more consistent idea of this, so that there were But there were also many fights, many debates, because there were also doctors who had a very different point of view in respect of what is the cause of hallucinations, or what is the cause of and why medication is important. Perhaps I suppose that for Birgitta also it was very important that in Finland, because there was the research process, integrated treatment in acute psychosis, very permanent professionals, professors and clinicians were involved. And I suppose that as myself also, I felt a lot of support of them being involved, Yrjö Alanen, Jukka Aaltonen, Viljo Räkkyläinen, and Ville Lehtinen, and others. And that also was an encouragement for Birgitta to become actively involved in this, looking for new ways of working.
I don't know if this is the right place to ask, or, but I'm also curious, Robert, since we are in the same space now, and it seems that you have connections and you are in discussions globally in many places. That, do you know what's, I mean, I know that I'm inside of this dialogical bubble in my social media and in my discussions, but what's the situation in general in mental health, psychiatry, human work? Or is this question to something too different?
Regarding the use of medications?
Yes, and how these situations and challenges in humanity are approached at the moment.
Yeah, honestly, I think there is we're at a moment where people are addressing this question and really asking the question. It's been a slow process. People move away from a paradigm of belief very slowly, of course, and especially if they have vested interests in that belief for various reasons. But you see, even in mainstream journals, people now asking, do we have any evidence that antipsychotics improve long-term outcomes? So that's not quite saying that, do we have evidence that, that they may be doing harm on the whole, but still the question is now out there. You really do see it out there. That's new. You also see, as part of that, because really that disease model failed, that biological model, it's failed. I mean, recovery rates for, quote, schizophrenia patients are worse now than they were 30 years ago, cross culture. So, and you are seeing, and I think, again, this goes to Birgitta's influence and your all influence. You do see these other projects starting up, these pilot projects, whether it be Soteria in Israel, or you see in Norway, of course, there's this medication-free initiative. There's a hospital, a private hospital that started up with the goal of helping people taper from the medications or provide medication-free treatment for those who want it, including, by the way, people who are psychotic and have even been chronically ill. So it's 2021. I really think we're at an inflection point where finally this question is really being considered seriously. What is the place of these drugs in terms of helping people over the long term, and not just look at symptom suppression, which is all what you've been talking about? And I think along with that, and you see this with the adaptation or the interest in open dialogue, is, well, what about more human practices? What about more collaborative work? What about when you don't just have a psychiatrist telling everyone what to do, but there's this group work? So I think what was planted in northern Finland over a course of 30 years, there's a lot of ideas that are taking hold, being considered, and it gives you hope for some real change. And I just want to go back to think about the difference in outcomes of what you see in terms of the disability rates and that sort of thing. You're talking about so many lives could be different. And I think that's so profound. And just to go, there was a question raised to the panelists, and really it's to you, Jaakko, that said, well, how come your research isn't given more credence? I don't know if you saw the question, but there's a question saying from Awas Aftab, that the research that you all have collected there and published there, because I guess because it's not a randomized trial, is not considered so convincing. So maybe you can answer that question in the Q&A.
Yeah, I didn't realize that question. Yeah, but it's a bit enigma for me also that open dialogue is most scientifically studied psychiatric approach in the world that I know. I don't know any other approach that has been so much studied and evaluated in a sense of seeing the outcomes and in a way of having qualitative analysis of the processes to develop the dialogues. And it still is not approved in the treatment of excellence guideline with this argument that because there is not randomized trials, we cannot take it. But it's a very stupid argument. People make rules to themselves and then they accuse others that you don't follow these rules. Randomized clinical trials are needed, but they produce information that is not valuable for the concrete clinical practice. And our studies that we have done, it's a very valid for clinical practice. For instance, we have 3 times repeated the same procedure in psychotic patients and all the time having the same outcomes. A kind of verification that is really what is happening in the real life. But for me, the proposal for the answer is that it's a question of human view. Because the traditional medical human view is based on symptoms and everything is based on removing the symptoms. And our way of dealing with more human perspective is look at the entire human lives. And it's so difficult. People do not, for instance, when they look at the results of the outcomes that I showed you, they said that this cannot be true. And that's why I give a seat to it. Because it's not possible for them to think if you only have an idea of that this is a brain disease and produce this kind of symptoms and you need medication to get rid of this. But I like the words of Bob that there really is also time to speak about our view of human. How do we think about, as Ray, for instance, spoke about, how to see things about all the things that has happened in our life, and how could we introduce that part of our field also. I don't know, there have been some writings, should we comment some? It would be very interesting to know some of the comments of questions that perhaps we can answer them afterwards. I would like to add one element of concerning Birgitta, and all who have been in contact with Birgitta are saying the same, that being in collaboration with her, you could not avoid to becoming friend with her. So that it's so respectful way that she deals with people, and it may be that Birgitta from the very beginning was like that. I met with her when we met in the work, and not before that. But I also think that teamwork makes me a better person. But I think that this idea that Kari spoke about, that when we share, when we are open in a team, we also become easily more human, and more human qualities of us are present in respect only think of this, let's say, psychiatric mind and focus.
Yeah, I was reflecting on the question of why, how do we speak about this to people that work in a very different paradigm? And how do we speak about this when there is a lot of research, but if you come at it from another paradigm, there's flaws in the research, there's ways it can be critiqued. And I think that's fine, because actually we can critique the medication research, the CBT research. This is the way. But what this approach is, for me at least, is about being essentially human and this trust in the team, trust in the family. I think one person said in the Q&A, it's with risk when we're going back the next day and Birgitta says, let's see tomorrow, let's see tomorrow. That can sound very much like what our crisis teams in England do. They come once a day, check we're alive, try and connect with us in ways that don't always work, and then go away and then come back the next day. But what is really hard to capture, and I think I'd love us to do better at capturing, is the quality of being. In open dialogue, when I've been in a team and said, when would you like us to come back tomorrow? Great. People haven't needed to call in the meantime often because they felt like we're with them and they felt some sense of connection and stability and presence that I never experienced in the crisis team, even though it looks very similar. So it's things that can look really similar from the outside and the structure, and maybe when we're trying to measure them, they seem similar, but they feel so different. And how we can get that across, I think, is one of the challenges for the next few years.
That's something strange that when I sometimes speak to people from working from different perspective, and they start saying, we are doing the same. So really pointing out well that there is difference. How to really relate and respond. It seems we have about 6 minutes. How shall we use the last 6 minutes?
Seija has put up a comment on the chat that I'd love to read aloud. Thank you so much for your condolences, Kitos. Thank you, Louisa, Kermit, Jaakko, and others for organizing this webinar. We are very honored for this, all the kind words and the appreciative way you colleagues are remembering one another. Thank you, Sandy, for touching memoriam you wrote. It's overwhelming for us family members to hear all your appreciation. Birgitta, I appreciated you so much too and enjoyed working in therapeutics and psychiatry because of you and the people around her. Thank you. And last words, I remember I had the pleasure of being taught by Kari in Finland, and you reminded me one time when I was doing something about last words. What last word do we have? We have 5 minutes. And
I'd like to offer a thought I've had in the course of this is that something that I believe is common to crisis situations is that all of the things that you thought were going to be the answer haven't worked. And you arrive at a moment of realizing you don't know what to do. And I think that what open dialogue might be thought of as doing is just skipping past all the thinking that you have the answer part and getting to the moment where you have no choice but to actually look to the people you're in the crisis with and say, what are we going to do now? That's what I got from this.
My last words could be that I was quite nervous about having this webinar talking here, but now I felt actually quite, it's been quite really nice to be with you and also acknowledging the interested people, a lot of interested people. Sorry, we cannot discuss with everyone. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you from my part as well. I know it's going to be a long night, maybe next night, because things start to come alive and after this conversation. But thank you for this, and look forward to see the chat box also later on. Thank you for everybody who has been here.
I'll just add my thanks. It's an incredible honor to be here and be among you, and thanks to Birgitta, and sending my condolences to her family. And I feel so that the positive part is I just feel so incredibly grateful to have known her and to have been able to be a part of what you've done. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you from me too. And the word trust was mentioned very often, and I have trust in the legacy of Birgitta. Thank you.
I've said much already, but yeah, thank you for you guys taking part, and for those that have contributed in the chat. As always in these events, I feel so many things sparking and so many conversations I still want to have, and a loss at not having them because it's imperfect and impossible, but also deep thanks. And yeah, I've met Birgitta only once. I wish I'd met her more, but I feel closer to her now after this than I had when previously. So thank you for giving me that gift.
I just want to note there's a thing from the chat saying, why don't we have a shared moment of silence right here at the end, which I think would be great, because we can bring in the people from the chat room and we can all share this moment of silence and think of our appreciation of Birgitta.
Thank you all so much. This conversation continues, and great gratitude for everyone's contribution. Yeah. It's